Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, giving you the updates and what we've been working on with MRDCL. In this webinar, Phil will take you through some of the things we've already done, some of the things we're working on, and also some of the things that we'll hope to do in the future. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see there's a Q&A box. If you've got any questions, please type them in there, and then we'll have a time for questions at the end. So I'm going to pass over to Phil now.
Thanks very much, Lauren. So the idea of this webinar, we decided is quite typical, I think, in development cycles, where you have periods where there's a lot to see that's been developed, and that as a user or as a potential user of MRDCL or any other product, you see a lot of new things going in. And then there's this quieter period where it looks as though not much is going on, and we're working on new things to give you in the not too distant future. And that's where we are at this moment. We've done a lot of new things in MRDCL last year, and we're on the verge of doing a whole load of new things that are going to be coming out over the next year or so. So that's the reason for this update, to sort of show you what we have just done, just to perhaps take you through that and give you an insight into where we're going. And there's some good reasons for that. MRDCL, of course, is a well-known now scripting tabulation software package that's used around the world. And I truly believe it is the #1 now when it comes to being able to do any tables you want, being able to script them efficiently so that you can produce your tabulations. But we're very aware that market research is moving on, so that reflects, I think, in how our development in MRDCL continues. So I'm going to take you through that and to explain some of the reasons, as well as some of the things that we're doing or have done. And I think you'll get a feel for where MRDCL has come from and where it's going. So let's kick off this session and take you through some of the things. I'm not going to go into any great detail about the things that have either come in or that are happening. It'll be slightly bullet point-like in some ways. I'm going to just talk about what they are without really going into too much demonstrating or too much depth. Clearly, any of the new things that have gone in, I'd encourage you to explore. But if you can't get them working, or you can't understand their benefits, or you want more information, of course, please contact our support, and we'll be pleased to give you either more detail of what these developments are, or how to use them if they're already in the software. So let's get started. I think I've used something like this slide at a previous MRDCL presentation a year or so ago. And what I talked about then was MRDCL in the 1990s was really aimed at putting all the functionality into it so that you could do your job efficiently, so that you could produce whatever tables your clients wanted and handle pretty much any data that you wanted. That moved on in the next decade to being able to use that functionality, but use it more efficiently. So we gave you tools so that you could build templates, so that you could manage lists, and you could start to do the sort of beginnings of some automation. And that was really what 2000 was about. And the reason for that was quite a simple one, in that I think labour costs were generally rising around the world, and actually to put effort into the efficiency of the software became quite an important thing, because the balance was changing, if you like, in business. Whereas computers used to be expensive, and software was probably more expensive, it's gone the other way now. The humans obviously are quite a big part of that now, and that's true for much of the world, if not all the world. And then we looked at productivity features, things that would really, and it ties in with efficiency, but things that meant you could start to automate, handling things like tracking studies and brand lists in spreadsheets, so that you could just manage a spreadsheet and your analysis could be automated from that spreadsheet, or perhaps specifying the tables you wanted from a spreadsheet. All those sorts of things we put in so that you could start to get really good productivity. What we've come to in the 2020s, and I think that sometimes there's a bit too much hype about this, is automation, and being able to almost, if you like, ideally, that is, press a button, you've got your data, you press a button and out come your tables at the other end. And I'll say a bit more about that in a minute, but we've done some significant things to MRDCL to make things more automated than they perhaps were previously. So that was reflected, if you like, in the 2021 version that we released of MRDCL. And now we're sort of coming to the next sort of thing on the list, which is sort of moving on to what I call data mobility. I think that market research has moved on quite a bit now. We're not just, if you like, doing what you might refer to as field and tab jobs, which we sort of did back in the 1990s and 2000s. There's a lot more need now to make your data mobile. And why is that? The reason is that there's more destinations, if you like, for your data. Sometimes people do just want some tables. Sometimes people want those key figures in a PowerPoint report. That has been happening for many years. But sometimes now people want it in a dashboard. They perhaps want the data in their own internal systems that they use or part of that data. And I think clients are more and more wanting to be able to get their hands on their data, shall we say. So I want to talk a little bit now about automation and data mobility and talk about where that fits in with MRDCL. So I think automation is perhaps a little bit overused. I think automation can, I see many providers of software saying that their software is fully automated, and that might be true in some cases. So it might be true if you're doing a customer feedback survey where you perhaps only got 5 questions and you want to get from your customers filling in a questionnaire on their phone or online in some way, and you want to produce some basic reports and you want to put that into a dashboard automatically. So automation is achievable in some cases when you've got, if you like, a packaged product that you're delivering. Market research tends to, or traditional market research certainly tends to get more complicated than that. We all know that questionnaires can get messy. If many of you I know working on tracking studies, so things like questionnaires on tracking studies are often in the situation where your client tells you it'll never change. And what we all know is that after 1 month, they want to add a couple of questions, add a couple of brands in or sub-brands. And what was going to be one questionnaire for the life of a tracking study changes regularly, and you need tools to be able to do that. Now, when that comes to doing automation, that is where a lot of bits of software start to struggle, because I saw a presentation recently where somebody was talking about automation. I won't name the product. And the question they got at the end of the webinar was, well, what if I got a tracking study where brands are added and taken away from time to time? And the reply was quite a terse one. It was, well, you've just got to recode the data. It doesn't take long. Well, I can beg to differ on that. Sometimes those sorts of tasks can take a long while and are very prone to error. So I think handling that sort of thing efficiently, even if it's only what I might call semi-automation, is incredibly important. It needs to be done as well as possible. And I know I got quoted many, many years ago that I've always thought that software should do the simple things simply, but be capable of doing more complex things in an efficient way. And I think that's where I sit with things like tracking studies and automating them. So automation comes in many forms. It comes from importing data so that you can just zap it into the system you want to. There are so many platforms out there now where you can collect data, which all have different standards, quality, and so on. And you might want to automate tables. That might be several runs of tables, perhaps a month with monthly data, 3 months data, and a year's data, or for different countries automatically. So automation for tables, doing those multiple runs where you perhaps got a run for individual countries and then perhaps an aggregated run for the whole of Europe or the whole of Asia or something like that. So being able to do that, and that's something we put into MRDCL now with the batch run facility, so you can set these things up and just click a button and it'll run them all. And you might want to output your data automatically to some system as well, so that it can be read back in by whatever a client uses, for example. So SPSS format is a common output that people want. And again, we would look and have looked to make that an automatic process so that your data is automatically ready for you. And then it goes on to doing things like reports and things like dashboards. We want to be able to automate as many of these processes as possible so that there's as little intervention as possible and as little scope as well for making errors as possible, because it is easy to make mistakes if you've got too much manual exporting and building dashboards and so on. And I talked about data mobility just now. I wanted to just say a bit more about that. I think it's the term I'm going to use for that is it's the ability to deliver data where you want it and how you want it as easily as possible. Clients are getting more demanding in what they want and how they want their data, and it's important to have software that lets you do that, lets you deliver it not just quickly but also in the form they want. Now, there'll always be difficulties with that because clients may want some proprietary format that's not easy to deal with. But again, the more tools you have available to make that possible, the more you're able to deliver what your clients need. And of course, these things do overlap, data availability and so on. So we've upgraded MRDCL, and first of all, we're going to take a very quick look back at what we did in the 2021 release. So let's have a look at that. The biggest thing that we did, and perhaps that people would have noticed, is that MRDCL used to be one piece of software, and we split it into MRDCL Classic, which is, if you like, what you perhaps for users have used it for many years, have seen for many years. And we've added on a sort of new part, a new module called MRDCL Central, and we'll be looking at that a little bit in a minute. We sort of think of MRDCL Central as a hub. So it's sort of going beyond what I suppose MRDCL's original purpose was, which was for just producing tables, if you like. That's its origins. And it's going on, for, obviously, for producing those tables with more tools for efficiency, multiple runs, as I explained just now, but taking it one step further so that you can deliver that data how you want to, or you can bring in data how you want to. And that's, if you like, where we're putting most of our development work at the moment, and that will be reflected in the things I'm showing you in the 2021 release and the plans for the next releases. So some of the things that happened in the 2021 release, I'm just going to go through these very quickly. We seriously increased the limits in MRDCL. The record length used to be just 99,999 characters. We've increasingly found that data sizes have got longer and longer, so that's the actual length of individual record in a file, and we've increased that to 300,000, and to the best of my knowledge, no one has exceeded that yet. But whereas all bits of software, most bits of software will have some limitation on that, you could even get around that in MRDCL by having multiple lines of 300,000 characters. And you can have, I think, as many of those as you want to. I can't see any physical limit on that. I can't imagine any physical limit on that. So there really is no limit now to the amount of data you can process in MRDCL. But the limit for an individual line in a file is 300,000 characters. We've also significantly updated or upped the limit for the number of items in a single or multi-variable. That's gone from 9999 to 30,000 items. So a huge increase there. The rows in the table now have gone from that number to 30,000 as well. So you can have 30,000 rows in a table. And rather than just 1,000 columns in a table, you can have 5,000 columns in a table. So some really huge tables that you can handle now in MRDCL if you want to. And for those who know what a data statement is, we've increased that to 2 million items in a data statement. They're just lists, if you like, which can be in a spreadsheet form or can be in a text file that can hold lists of texts or instructions or whatever it might be. But that's been up to 2 million now. It's totally the biggest project that we ever would encounter. There's some new features in the 2021 version. We've introduced a new type of variable called a J variable, and that's for big integers that are greater than 9 digits. Integers did work perfectly well up to 9 digits, and we've now upped that to 15 digits with a DJ type variable. So they become quite common in data, or become more common in data, because sometimes there's IDs, for example, where brands or codes have perhaps 12, 13 digits in them. And so we've upped that limit in a DJ variable. Another major feature in the last version was that we allowed you to read data directly from a CSV file without having to convert it to an ASCII file. So you can read that using that syntax that you see to the right there, Q1 equals */12. So what that means is it's looking for a field called Q1 in a CSV file, and it'll be picking up codes 1 and 2. So you haven't got to go through that extra conversion process that you had to prior to last year's version. We've added in a new feature as well, where you have a master STPX file. This is not mandatory. It's really more for convenience. We know that many users have multiple STP files that are used to build or run. Sometimes it can be hard to find, if you go back to an old project, which one's the master that actually calls all the other files. And so we've allowed an STPX extension, which will be treated as the master, making it easy for you to identify when you look in Explorer or something like that. We've improved our statement so you can do more interactive things. You can have multiple drop-down lists and so on now. And we've done some huge upgrades to significance tests. Previously, we only had Z-tests. You've got T-tests and Z-tests being optionally used now. And I'm not a statistician, but for those who are, they will understand that we put in new features for combined variance and for continuity correction. I'm not going to cover that topic right now. We've also added in an overlap formula. This is where you've got multi-response variables going into the banner of your tables, and you want to use what's known as the overlap formula in significance testing. That comes with a slight overhead, because actually what it does, it compares every single column against every single column. And so there is a limit of 90 columns on that particular feature. As you can imagine, the number of columns tested by each column gets quite a lot of columns behind the scenes once you've got 90 columns. MRDCL Central itself, it's got a much more modern file management system now than it had before. We've introduced a color-coded editor so that you can see your scripts much more clearly now by just looking at the text in color. We'll quickly look at that in a minute. We've introduced and vastly improved the imports from SPSS and SSS. We automatically now can generate tables in Excel files with hyperlinked tables so that you can navigate a volume of tables that you've produced. We've got a batch run facility, which I think I mentioned at the beginning there, so that you can set up multiple runs just to run one behind the other, to leave running overnight, or whatever it is you want to do. If you've got really big runs, if you've got 100 big runs you want to set up to run overnight, you could just leave them to run themselves, and they will work and give you a report on their success and so on. And as I mentioned, we've got automated exports now, not experts, exports, and that includes automating the output of SAD files, which is an upgrade on what we had before. So let's have a quick look at the MRDCL Central interface. I'm not going to spend too long here, really just a couple of minutes at the most. And if we just extend it here. So this is what I mean by the color-coded editor. It just makes it a little bit easier to read it. You can see different things are in different colors, so that you can pick out different parts of the code a little bit more easily. One of the things that we've really improved, and I think it's become, a necessity now, is importing data. Now, what we found is that more and more data is being output from a lot of the data collection platforms in SPSS format. And so we've vastly improved our import from SPSS. Now, our sort of first step we made on that to read directly from a SAD file was okay, and I would say like 95%, I would say, of the imports that you get when you import SPSS data to most other tabulation software programs. Let me show you what I think's wrong with most of them. So I've imported that data from SPSS, and I've got a set of tables automatically. Well, that's fine. And it looks quite good what I've got here. That's quite impressive that I imported 500 records there and all the texts, and I'm able to get a set of tables. All right, I haven't added a banner yet, but I've got that very quickly, and that's quite impressive. But the problem that most imports have when they read from SPS is they are left the sort of standards that SPSS store data. So if we look at this table here, you can see what we've got for brand A is no, 67%, brand A, 31%, brand B, no, 62%, brand B, 36%. This is not very useful because what you typically want in your tables is brand A, B, C, D, and so on, all in one table. So what we've done, you can get this very quick import, as I just showed you there, which is useful if you want to get quick count on your data without doing any sort of interim work. But you could also go one step further now, or two steps further actually, and you can run using a CSV file. Now, if I just open up this file, you'll see what I mean. So you could see here, this is a CSV file. You could open this in Excel if you wanted to. It's just MRDCL Central, open it in the file within the software. And you can see I can put some controls in here. I can use this field, but ignore that one. I can ignore all these. That question 5 where you saw brand ABC just now, I can put them all together as one variable. So now I'm going to get Q5 as one variable. So now if I import and run my tables, there's the run button, there it is, and I get my tables, you can see, for example, I've got brand ABC in one table now, which is probably how I want it. But it goes a bit further than that, the import. Another thing that we've done to it to make it even better is we've got a setting over here, which under settings, you can select concise MRDCL. Now that won't mean anything to a non-MRDCL user, but it will mean something to an MRDCL user. And what it means is it's got built-in intelligence so that it will read all of your, read the SPSS file and turn it into script that uses the preprocessor. Now this might not sound very exciting, but it is when you think about what you might want to do with it. It means if I had 100 rating statements there and I want to put a top two box in, I can just make one change like that and I've got my top two box. With almost every other software product on the market I know of, you would have to go through 100 variables and add 1.2 or whatever the code was to get your top two box. So what we've done is made the script that it produces really efficient to work with. So this is not automation. It is in some senses in that it's automating efficient script, but it means that when you've got it and you want to edit it, it's very easy for you to do. You're not going through lines and lines of code, making changes that are obviously prone to error. So that's a vast improvement that we've added to our imports, because really responding to the number of people who want to read SPSS files, and SPSS files not always being particularly friendly to read in. So you can control them as you read them now. What we're perceiving though is sort of more than this. So we're perceiving that there are more data collection platforms, as I said, and that there's more data in SPSS format, but there's a greater need to use MRDCL as a hub. And that's, if you like, to manage your data, to read it in so that you can push it onto a client system, a dashboard system, whatever it might be, generating perhaps complex variables so that everything is ready to go into another phase. And you want links, therefore, to dashboard systems and improved reporting. So all these things are happening. And I think, you know, we're perhaps at the beginning of that curve. Some people say we're well into it, but I think we're, you know, it's going to be something that grows very rapidly over the next 2 to 3 years. And so it's something we all ought to take quite seriously. So let's look at some of the new things that are going on, and I'm going to take you through these fairly quickly, again, because I'm just going to talk about, there's not much to show yet because they're not all in place, they're all in development, but we've we're adding a new stage to an MRDCL script, and that stage is a PowerPoint automation stage. So you'll be able to script what charts or what PowerPoint template you want to update with figures from your tables. So if we look at this a little bit of detail, just brief detail here if you like, but just an overview. So we have tables just like you normally have. So there's your table stage. Then that goes on to a stage where if you want to create a PowerPoint template, or using a PowerPoint template, giving it some titles and so on, you'll see down here you can use the preprocessor, just like you can when you're specifying variables and tables. And then you can set different parameters. You can set, as you can see, if you skim over that very quickly, but you can see you set the size of things, the fonts that you want, the position, any titles you want to overwrite, and so on. This might not be the final syntax, by the way, so don't learn this yet, but it's close to the final syntax now. And you can see in this last one, or just before the last of the red lines there, that I can define a new shape too, and I set the coordinates of that and the size of it by the axis X, axis Y, the height and the width, so that I'm positioning a particular shape onto a page. And then finally, it's arranging the deck so that it comes out in the order 1, 2, 3, or we could have reordered that 3, 2, 1 if we wanted to, and so on. And then it will produce not only a set of tables and maybe a set of tables in Excel if you ask for that, and also some charts, but you'll also get a PowerPoint report generated straight off the back of your tables, which is refreshed if you rerun again. So really powerful new feature coming into MRDCL in a new stage within the software. It will be part of MRDCL Central Plus, which would be a small extra license fee, but it will mean that you can automate straight from data through to PowerPoint if you wish to. Another thing that we're doing is SAPI implementation. Now, SAPI, I did speak about at a previous webinar. I would encourage you to all have a look at SAPI. It's at sapi.net, tsapi.net. It's a new standard that's, I would say, in development, but I think it's more or less developed. It hasn't been finished yet, and it hasn't been made available fully for developers yet. But it's a standard for storing market research data. Now, it uses an API for transferring survey data. Now, this might, on the surface, sound a bit like SSS, which is a standard for holding surveys. SSS is really aimed at the market research industry only. So it's sort of like a within industry tool for moving data between one software platform and another. SAPI is an API, which is the way that different software systems communicate. So to give you an example of that, if you, I don't know, book an airline ticket, you might do that with the airline in their booking system. That then might transfer to your bank automatically when you make payment for the flight. And that's an API that's linking that booking system with a bank system so that the money is deducted from whatever account it's meant to be. And there are more APIs out there than that. If you order supermarkets, for example, you're ordering your goods, that's going to another system that's probably dealing with stock, that connects to a bank and so on. So you can sort of see this happening when you're using online software. Different things are connecting together. They're not all one system. And so what SAPI is all about is connecting market research data to other business data. So this is a real opportunity for market research to, if you like, become more important in the business world by having its data available in the business intelligence software and that sort of area. So, you know, all these information systems out there that the big banks, many big companies use, it'll be a way of communicating any part of your survey data, not all of it necessarily, but parts of it, directly into another system, so that you know, companies can do have their own reporting systems that pull your survey data together with their own data, which may include sales, KPIs, targets, and whatever else it is they have on their systems. So this is quite a big initiative, and it's something that we'll be adopting in the coming year. So we will have this available within MRDCL. What else have we got? Well, another thing that's coming is something called script bubbles. Now, script bubbles are sort of quick ways of dragging something. So there's the, as you see on the left-hand side of the screen here, that's the interface you saw just now from MRDCL Central. You'll be able to drag these snippets of code, if you like, that pop up a form so that you can fill it in and it will drop that code into the left-hand side over here, so that you generate script automatically. So we call them script bubbles, and you can design these script bubbles for yourself so that they're interactive and they give you your own interface, if you like, to make chunks of script. So let's take an example. Something like a summary table can be a little bit boring to define in MRDCL sometimes. There are some shortcuts to do that through EPS and so on, but you would be able to make your own script bubble, or will actually deliver quite a lot. It'll be downloadable, of course, but there'll be a script bubble where you can just drag that from the right-hand side over here, pull it into your workspace in the middle here, fill in some things on a form, and it will automatically generate the script based on the things you've got in your form. So for a summary table, you might say it's question 7, so that it pulls in Q7_1 to Q7_6. You might tell it it's got 6 columns, and the text for those columns comes from wherever it comes from. So it will, you'll be able to develop this as much as you want to, although, as I say, we'll probably provide, I haven't decided yet, but I suspect somewhere like 20, 30 different script bubbles that you can edit and build on from our resources. So there's the sort of things that you can put in. You can build these things, and then you can just call these different types of things that you want in it. And you can here then have drop downs that allow you to pick things so that they can be used in definitions and automate. And you've got obviously a tools up here to build these and generate them. So these will be coming in as well. These are due for, I think, early next year. But you've got some quite powerful things in there that can even use EPS as well, so that you're interacting or having a friendly front end, if you like, to managing something that's quite complex that's managed through an Excel spreadsheet. And here we've got weighting and so on. You could even do your rim and target weighting through a script bubble. So some really powerful tools in there that allow you to do some really clever things with a shortcut method. Another thing that we're working on, which will be probably available a bit more sooner than next year, is the import of text-based data. We're finding there's more and more data that's coming in looking like this. So you don't get codes and a lookup, you just get texts like that. And what we're doing now is developing a tool that allows you to read these fields. If you want to combine fields together, rather like I showed you with SPSS imports, just now, you could put Q3_1 to Q3_7 into one variable so that it was as you need it for analysis. But it'll automatically go through here, find all the different texts and build you a script and have that data available for you so that you can go straight to producing tables. And it'll also allow you to reorder them. So if it picked up these in the wrong order, because it wouldn't know, we know that it should go 16, 24, 25, 34, 35, 44, 45, 54, and so on. If it picked them up in the wrong order because it found them in a different order, you'll have a tool to reorder them in the order that you want, so that and it will store that, so that if you do it again, it will automatically be there. So there's some nice tools in there to make that a bit more useful. So that's all coming in the near future. And finally, we will be having a linkage to Tableau. We're very aware that quite a lot of people use Tableau for their dashboard work. And whilst you can, I think, export an SPSS file and then read that into Tableau, Tableau's got its own format for automating data into its system. And we'll be providing that linkage so that you can just literally go straight to Tableau and have your project data ready. So some really useful things coming, really all centered around this whole idea of making things as easy as possible to move data about the place, both to bring it in and to take it somewhere else. I've always had the opinion that it's important that MRDCL lets data in as easily as possible and lets data out as easily as possible, because you don't know what people's destination is and what clients' needs are. I don't like software that perhaps either lets you in but doesn't let you out, or perhaps even worse, you have to do everything with that bit of software and you're really contained. I really think it's important that you can bring data in and get it out where you want it and how you want it efficiently. What else is new? Well, we've got a new MRDCL.com website. There's a very active blog on there. There's already 50 videos we've had now for a couple of years or so, but there's been 20 new ones added. So I think we now have in excess of 70. So that's information or stuff that's been available now for a few months. What else we've got here? We've now made MRDCL embeddable in other platforms so that you can actually put MRDCL into your platform if it runs under Windows or Linux, so that you can send it instructions to automatically run your tables for you within your platform and deliver the results within your platform, so that you could, for example, go straight to a dashboard or straight to a chart. Now, I don't know how many people on this webinar have their own platforms, but that's something that we've worked hard on in the last year, and we now have some customers using and making use of, and it's a very efficient way, if you like, of using MRDCL as a black box. Resolve has been available for more than a year now, so that's replaced Reflect as our secondary analysis tool. The base version of that is free to use. There is a premium version that's available that has some extra tools to let you do more complex things. A little bit like Script Bubbles, in the sense that you've got add-ins so that you can actually plug in bits of code, or your clients can plug in bits of code that will automatically produce more complex analysis than you might normally be able want to do, or maybe able to do, shall I say. All right, so there's the things that are also, and all these things on this page here are available now. These are not the future. These are all very much present now. There will be some more videos coming as well, particularly to reflect the new things that are being added to the software. So at that point, I'm going to take a pause. I've only run by a few minutes. I've left my email address on this screen here, but I guess it'd be good if we've got any questions. I'll be very pleased to try and answer them. So I don't know if any have come in. Lauren, are there any questions?
Yeah, we do have a few questions.
Okay.
So I'll go through them now.
Okay.
Is SAPI in use already?
Yes, I sort of dodged that question a bit when I talked about SAPI. It is available now. It is in use on the SAPI.net website. The specifications, if you like, are there and downloadable. There's various bits of code in GitHub that you can download, so it is ready. What isn't ready, to the best of my knowledge anyway, is that what the plan is, talking to the people who are doing this, it's not us organising this, I'm in touch with the people running it, but I'm not a part of it, is that each platform that's going to adopt the SAPI standard needs to have a tool that checks that it's doing it correctly. So when, for example, we get it working in our system, in MRDCL, it'll be right, of course, that it's checked that it's actually been implemented correctly by us, so that when other people read it, the other side, the data the other side, it is perfect. That was always a problem with SSS, where we found odd bugs in various formats that people output, where they had little things that they hadn't thought of or they hadn't done. That checker's not available yet, to the best of my knowledge. I think there is a call going out at some point soon for some funding from different companies, to fund that. It's not a major project, but it does need some funding. And then really the next step is actually marketing it to the business intelligence platforms, for example, so that they adopt SAPI as a way of reading in market research data. You know, companies like Qualtrics and things would hope would adopt it as well, so that it means that data is much more mobile, which is what this is all about. So yes, it is available now. You can develop it now, and there is some tidying up to do and tightening, but yes, it's there as far as I know anyway. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, the next one. How do MRDCL's tools for tracking studies work?
That's a sort of an hour-long webinar of its own. The way I'd answer that is that you can build, I did mention tracking studies being a good example where you want automation, and automation often falls down in a lot of platforms on that. You've got tools in MRDCL so that you can manage things in spreadsheets, for example. There's an example. So you could have a master brand list in a spreadsheet, and you could just update that spreadsheet, and it would automatically then change the data for you, or change the analysis for you to match what it finds in the spreadsheet. And that includes things like data layout. So I know one of the sorts of things that can happen is that you've got a brand list of 100 brands, and suddenly there's another black brand that alphabetically goes in at brand 37, and all the brands move down one. So brand 37 now is a new brand, and 38 is what 37 was, and 39 is what 38 is. Now that's a nightmare for most software packages. MRDCL can handle that sort of thing. So I think really all I can say is we've got in MRDCL all the tools you need to manage a tracking study efficiently. Whether there's changes in the questionnaire, the structure of the questionnaire, questions being present or coming and going as they do on some surveys. They might have the question every other month, for example. All the tools you need for managing that are available in MRDCL, including changes to codes and brand lists and things that are easy to forget, but when it comes to doing the data processing and managing your data and making that data mobile, as I keep talking about, can be really time consuming and error prone things that you just don't want to have your staff or your team or yourself who's doing it having to handle, because it's time consuming, messy work. So yeah, we've got the tools that make that as easy as possible, but I can't really answer it much more than that in a 2-minute answer, which I probably would spend 3 minutes on.
Okay, I suppose the best thing is for them to drop our support an email if they're struggling with their tracking study, and then
yeah, that's right. I think that's a good idea. Yes, that's right, Laura. If you've got a tracking study and you want some help on how to approach it and to look at it the right way, please get in touch with our support, and we'll give you some tips on the best way of approaching things. And I think we have some videos as well that we can point you at that will help with that, and some examples. So yes, very much so.
Excellent. Okay, can MRDCL deliver data directly into other systems?
That's, if you like, the whole idea of SAPI. It's an API, so that as MRDCL runs, it will put the data into SAPI format, so that if the software at the other end is plugged into it, it can just zap that straight in. So the answer at the moment is no, if I'm honest, because there's a manual process involved, I think, in most cases. Yeah, I suppose we could just, yes, we could do it by connecting via Google Drive or something like that, a SAV file, so that if another system recognised that file being updated, it automatically read it in. But it's not as smooth as it should be. But that's exactly what SAPI will do for us once we've got that up and running. So yes, that's where I'm thinking what the answer is really. Okay,
and the last one,
yep.
What does MRDCL Central cost?
MRDCL Central is free to anybody who uses who gets an MRDCL license. It's all the classic. I showed you that slide where we split what was MRDCL into classic and central. You get both of those bundles all for the same price, but you don't get it free. It's not just free; it comes with as part of the package. So yeah, there's no cost to it. We will be releasing MRDC Central Plus, which has the PowerPoint automation module that I outlined, and that will have an extra license fee, but it won't be a huge fee. It will just be a small cost for having that extra module. No, the current MRDCL Central, everything I showed you today and everything else that I've talked about is free.
Excellent. Okay, well, that's it for the questions. Is there anything else you want to say? Shall I round up?
No, I think I think I've covered a lot of ground there in this session today. I would encourage you to look at the PowerPoint. We'll send the PowerPoint out in the coming days. Have a look at it, and if there's anything you want more information about, just either email myself, or Nikki's address is on the screen at the moment, or email our support, and we'll go in a bit more depth with it. If you want an online session with us to go through a particular aspect of what I've talked about today in a bit more depth, or indeed got any ideas on things that would perhaps make it even better, things that I've talked about today, I want to check that we're actually implementing certain things, please get in contact with us, because we want to do what you want, not just what we want. And we're also responding to customer feedback, but it's important we do get feedback from you. So yeah, please get in touch with us, because I think I've covered a lot in a short time today, and it's only when you absorb the bullet points on the slides a bit more and think about, well, does it do that, does it do this, that you might have more questions. So yeah, by all means, get in contact with us.
Excellent. Okay, and as Phil said, we'll be sending the PowerPoint out in the coming days, along with the recording. We'll also send a form out. It's actually a form that I do send out with the MRDCL license, and it's like a development ideas form, things that might make the software easier for you, things you're struggling with. So if you've got any ideas, pop them in the form, and then we can review them. Okay, well, thanks for joining us this morning, and have a great day.
Thank you. Goodbye.